in general, I don't believe that the system of democracy, the way we have it, will work.
Welcome to Thoughtful Money. I'm its founder and your host, Adam Taggart. Thanks for joining us for part 2 of our interview with investing legend Dr. Marc Faber. If you haven't yet watched part 1 of our discussion with Marc, in which he warns that investment returns enjoyed over the past several decades are now relics of history and we should prepare for more disappointing markets ahead, be sure to catch that after watching this video. Okay, let's get started watching part 2 of our interview with Dr. Marc Faber. I was just at a conference, had the real privilege of moderating a panel that I was actually not supposed to moderate. The moderator, a fellow named Gary Alexander of Navalier Associates, was supposed to moderate it, and he ended up not feeling well, so I had to step in at the last minute. Great panelist. Matt Taibbi was on there, a few other great minds. I kicked off the panel with reading some of Gary's prepared notes, and I'd just like to read it to you quickly and get your reaction to it.
Okay.
Here's what he said. He said, "I never thought I would say this, but the last 2 decades, since George Bush and Karl Rove, have made me say that the 20th century looks like responsible government spending and control by comparison to the 21st century so far. The federal deficit has exploded tenfold since 9/11. It looks like Obama bin Laden won on that fateful day. He turned us into paranoid terrorist fighters, overseas warmongers, homeland spies of our own people, and terminal spendthrifts." I'd like to get your reaction to that. And if so, what causes, in your estimation, are principally responsible for this?
Well, that's a good question. What is responsible for developments in societies, which way they go, and so forth? In general, I don't believe that the system of democracy, the way we have it, will work. I don't think that a system where everybody can vote will work, and it will be abandoned and taken away by the elite. The elite, and I'm not calling the elite in a negative connotation, but if you look at history of mankind, say 5,000 years of reasonably well-documented history, there were always some people at the top of the government, at the top of the wealth pyramid, and there were lots of poor and lots of what I would call, in quotation marks, slaves, the people that have to work and so forth, in whatever form they were kept. But there were always the royals at the top. The American natives had chieftains and so forth. And in what we used to call primitive societies, they also have chieftains and so on. And we will go back to that society. The question is, will we have a leader that is an unpleasant leader who is like Stalin, where you have essentially no freedom? Or is it a relatively benign leader like Trajan was at the time of the Roman and so forth? So this is the question going forward. But the tendency of a government to grow is always there, because the bureaucracy, in order to survive, they will, like a growth stock, like Procter & Gamble is a growth company. They have always new products, they expand in new markets, they expand into new countries. The government will always expand its power. And so they keep on growing and growing and growing. At the end, everything is government, and the private sector is very small. And the war is a business. A lot of people make a lot of money out of wars. And I'm not even talking about the military complex, but say we have a huge immigration problem in Europe. Some people will deny that it's a problem. I think it is a problem. We have all these North Africans coming to Europe, and Black populations and Middle Eastern people and so forth. And the character of Europe is changing a lot as a result. And whether you can control this in the long run is a big question. We could be, say, in Switzerland or in Germany, a Muslim country in 20 years' time or 30 years' time. It's possible with Sharia laws.
That is.
I'm not saying, as a philosophical observation, it would be difficult to say it's going to be worse than it is now, because Spain under Moorish rule, say Cordoba was the world's largest city for a while, and Granada were very important cities that were relatively free. But if you ask Spaniards, and you look at Spanish texts of the time, then they would dispute that it was very free. Mm-hmm. They will say, well, it was maybe free compared to the period of Inquisition that followed. But who knows exactly how free it was?
So, I had a discussion at our recent conference with Kyle Bass where we touched on immigration, and it's such a hot button issue right now. And I don't want to make any sort of, partisan comment if I can avoid making it, but I do think that whatever your immigration policy is, it should be intentional. And to your point, Mark, it sounds like Europe is I think an even worse situation than the U.S., where we don't really have a strategy that at least I think most people can discern right now. In Europe, whatever happens in 30 years or so, if it does become, let's use your example of Sharia law becoming, so popular that it gets adopted there, maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, but that's something that people should be intentionally deciding right now whether that's what they want or not. And it doesn't seem like there's a plan in place behind Europe's current immigration policy.
Look, I'm a member of the committee for Swiss neutrality. We want to introduce into the constitution stronger words about neutrality. We refer in our present constitution to neutrality, but it's not well defined in the sense that Switzerland, in an extreme case, could join NATO. The voices in Switzerland, they want to join NATO. It's not my initiative, but I'm a member. I strongly oppose Switzerland becoming anything else than neutral. And I don't want to go into the subject here because it's quite complex. But basically, we can do for the world much more by being neutral than not. Much more, we can do much more favorable things for the world if we're neutral than if we are in the American camp or NATO camp, or if we are a close ally of China or of Russia. You understand? So for such a small country like Switzerland, completely insignificant economically in the world, the best for us is to be neutral. But some people object to that. They think we should be NATO and have the NATO army in Switzerland and so forth and so on. So there are different views, and through this initiative, what I found out is people are incredibly lethargic and complacent. If you go to people and tell them, look, these are the facts about the neutrality, they all agree. You ask them to sign something, they will not sign it. Only half the people in Switzerland vote usually at elections. Very few people vote. They say, it's none of my business. Because they live in comfort.
I was going to say,
and
just
we have
the
an
complacency
expression in
that
Switzerland,
happens.
The Salon Socialists. The Salon Socialists are people who live in wealth, in the best locations, but they themselves are socialists. That they don't pay tax, you know, that they don't do. But they are socialists.
Yeah, we have that out here in California, where we call them Palo Alto socialists, where they're the people who have made ungodly amounts of money through their tech winnings.
Exactly. Yes, yeah. Hollywood.
Well, okay. So look, here's where I'm going with this, which is, you know, that quote by Gary, just it talks about how that creep of government control that you mentioned, Mark,
yes,
seems to be increasing, you know, from the start of this millennium. We now have all these geopolitical risks that are swirling around out there, and they're very real risks, right? I mean, it's Ukraine, the Ukraine-Russia war, it's the flare-up of hostilities back in the Middle East, it's the saber rattling over, you know, with China over Taiwan. I guess two questions for you. One is you know, which one of those, if any, really concerns you right now? And I imagine that is just putting more and more pressure of the type that you're seeing in Switzerland, where people are taking those risks and trying to push for more concessions, either on personal liberty or, you know, they're just trying to drive social programs with the fear of those risks behind them.
Yes, but I'm not terribly concerned of the escalation of these conflicts at the present time. But long term, I think they would escalate. The other thing I want to really stress here is in Asia itself, the issue between Taiwan and China is not a subject of widely discussions. I think Asians feel if left alone, it's not an issue. But the neocons in the US, they were the ones that financed and organized the demonstrations in Hong Kong through American NGOs. They wanted to create an embarrassment for China. And the demonstrations in Hong Kong were the first stepping stone. Now they want to embarrass China with Taiwan. The Taiwanese don't want war, the Chinese don't want war, nobody in Asia wants war, but the outside influence can lead to hostilities. I think we will prevail and there will not be any war, but it is something to at least keep in mind. By the way, if I look at the Asian geography, I would be in the middle of the war theater, because the war theater would be going from the south, from Vietnam, Thailand, the north into Yunnan province. You understand? We have train connections between Thailand now and China through Laos.
I do. So if this happens, you've got a dog in this fight personally. Yeah.
Yeah. And the American, this is unheard of in Thailand. They're building a consulate in Chiang Mai. I live in Chiang Mai, it's in the north of Bangkok. They call it the mountains, but it's not mountains, hill. But the Americans are building a consulate for $250 million US. It shows the Americans have a strong interest here in the north of Thailand, because of its strategic location right in the drug center. You understand? This is the golden triangle. The CIA was always involved in the drug trade.
Wow. All right.
This is well documented. I'm not talking conspiracy theories. Well documented. The CIA was involved in drug trade.
Well, we have history of that in our own hemisphere with CIA in Latin America. So it wouldn't be the first time.
Anyway, but I need to slowly go because I have to work.
All right. So look, let me wrap this up. Let me ask one last question to tie this up in a bow. Then I'm going to ask you to tell folks more about your publication, and then we'll clock off.
Thank you.
So real quick, Mark, and thank you so much for giving us so much time here. This is wonderful as always. So kind of where all this is going is there's more and more pressure that I think is building on a lot of the social populace, right? At least in the West here, where they're feeling like the government's becoming more and more constrictive. Matt Taibbi, who was in that panel, he talked a lot about the censorship that's been going on that he helped uncover, through his work on the Twitter files, which I'm sure you read about. And of course, that's not the only place censorship has been happening. And so it's beginning, the government's, tightening grip is becoming more and more visible. And that's happening at a time, as you said earlier, where people are feeling that their personal financial prospects are diminishing. So, one can make the argument that there is this sort of social pressure cooker building. That is, people feel like more and more of their future prospects are getting more and more diminished, that you then risk hitting some sort of boiling over point. That's sort of where I was heading with all this. And I'm just curious, what is your outlook and level of concern around that in the major Western countries?
My concern about this specific question is the following. If you look at the pattern of the Republicans in America and the Democrats, and you look at the pattern of European governments, one thing is striking. Government expenditures go up under every government. They go up. The Republicans want to spend on this and will go to war about this and that. And the Democrats want social programs and so forth. And in Europe, it's the same. If I'm, say, a government official, I want to get elected, and I go to the people and tell them, look, we need to solve our problems. The 3 ways to solve it. We need to increase your taxes. We need to cut your benefits. And we need to retreat internationally. You think I have a chance to get a single vote? Increase your taxes, reduce your benefits? Forget it. The problem in a democracy is you have to be a liar to get elected. Otherwise, you have no chance to get elected if you tell people the truth. The people don't want to hear the truth. They want a government to perform like a magician, and it's not possible.
I totally agree, but you can't run a nation on lies forever, right? So you get to some point where the lies catch up with you, right? Are we destined to hit that?
That's why I say, I think we'll move into the servile state. I mean, I have 2 books here. Here he has a chapter on in capitalism, socialism, and democracy. He has a chapter where he gives a speech to the economic club in New York, and he says capitalism will inevitably lead to socialism and to a totalitarian state, essentially. And he presents his arguments. We have to talk about this another time because I don't have now much time. But it will end, and maybe it will end soon, and maybe the Roman Empire, the surprising thing, it lasted 600 years. The Byzantine, it lasted more than 1,000 years. That is the astounding thing. But nowadays, I don't think it will last this long. And the democratic process, I think, will be finished in, say, 20, 30 years.
Wow. Okay. We're going to have to leave it there because I could talk to you for a whole nother hour on that topic alone, Marc. So let's earmark this to really dive deeply into this next time you come on the channel. Very quickly, beyond the investments that you suggested earlier, are there any steps that you would recommend for the average person who is concerned about these issues that we've been talking about? I'd say move to Thailand, but I don't know, you might be in a war theater soon, so who knows?
Yes. I think the most important is to be prepared in life that whatever you enjoy enormously and wherever you are successful, you will have to deal with setbacks. And I don't necessarily advocate the Stoic philosophy of essentially tolerating everything, but I believe that we have to get used to the fact that sometimes the weather will be warmer and sometimes colder, and sometimes there will be years when we make a lot of money and other years when we lose money, and there will be periods of good leaders and bad leaders. My sense is that people should reduce their expectations in order to have a fulfilling life, and not to think that everything will be instant gratification. This would be my observation.
If I could distill that down, I would say cultivate resilience, especially emotional resilience.
Yes. And I think that it's a big mistake for people to put every detail of their life on Facebook and picture themselves all the time and so forth. I think I have a friend, he's a billionaire. He disappeared. Nobody knows him. Nobody knows he's got money. He just disappeared. I am in touch with him and I know him because we know he's a subscriber and he knows me personally and I know him personally. But other than that, he doesn't want people to know what he's done in his life.
You're talking about what's called the gray man strategy, which is to be as invisible as possible, basically.
Yes, the best is to go and live in a small village, but don't go and show your wealth. You have to go there as a little bit stupid, as an ordinary person. Then you nobody will be attracted to you.
Well, and they'll be attracted to you for the right reasons, not for your money.
Yes.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much I know we ran over. Thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. Really look forward to having you back on the channel. Thank you for being my inaugural guest here. For folks that have really enjoyed this discussion.
It's a great honor.
Thank you. Well, for folks that want to follow you and your work, where should they go from here?
They can go to the website gloomboomdoom.com. But I want to warn you, if the interview flops, don't think it's because of you. It will be because of me.
Not at all. Not at all. I know folks are going to love
great.
it. Thank you so much, my friend. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. Great honor.
Okay, well, we'll let you go, Mark. Everyone else, to wrap things up, as you know, this is a brand new YouTube channel. So before you go, be sure to hit the like button, as well as the subscribe button below, and that little bell icon right next to it. We want to rebuild the subscriber number for this new channel as fast as we can to make sure the YouTube algorithm knows to share this video widely with other critically thinking viewers like you. Also, when you click on that little bell icon, you'll be alerted when we release new interviews in the future. And boy, do we have a great lineup of experts already booked for the rest of the year. In just the next 2 weeks, I'm recording a debate with Matthew Piepenburg and Brent Johnson. Yes, that long-awaited matchup is indeed happening. And then with David Rosenberg, and then Fred Hickey of the High Tech Strategist, then Ted Oakley, and then Jesse Felder. And that's just warming up for who's to come afterwards. Also, if you aren't yet subscribed to my new Substack account, go to that now at adamtaggart.substack.com. It's completely free to subscribe, and that's where I'll be sharing important updates in the weeks ahead about what's next for Thoughtful Money. Thanks so much for watching this interview with the incomparable Marc Faber, especially to those of you who followed me over from my old channel to this new one. Your support during this transition has been overwhelming, and I am deeply grateful for it. Now, if you have the time and haven't seen it already, click here to watch my recent interview with Nobel Prize-winning economist Michael Spence, who was also my dean at Stanford Business School. The discussion is well worth your time. Thanks so much for watching.